Steadily it rises.
Hey, it's ODB, the Lincoln Addict, back with another listing review. We're getting ready to jump into a 67 Lincoln. But first, I want to say, hey, I'm wearing an In-N-Out hat. Do you like In-N-Out or do you prefer Whataburger? A buddy of mine gave this to me recently at a car show. He is in Texas, so he loves his Whataburger. I love some In-N-Out. What do you think? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What I'm going to do here on this listing review, if you're a return viewer, you know I'm going to kind of go through some of the key things about the listing. I'll talk about the pros of this particular car, and then we'll talk about some things to consider before we wrap it up. This auction ends at the time of this recording in about 20 hours, give or take about 21 hours. But by the time I upload this, it'll be about 20. So I want to get this completed. That way you'll have an opportunity. If this is a car that you're looking at potentially buying, you'll have a little bit more potential facts on this one. Now, I will say I am working on recording more content for Lincoln Addict Podcast. So just know I haven't given up on that. I'm trying to put together as much as I can, but I've been working on kind of moving some equipment and things like that. So there's going to be more to come in 2025. Keep it posted here on YouTube. Now, I will say there are two cars that I'm both going to cover, but you'll see on the screen the 67 is what I'm covering today because it ends in 20 hours. There is a 62 Coyote swap sedan that is ending in 2 days. That's at currently $90,000. I'm chomping at the bit to review that one. So more than likely tomorrow, the very next day after this one posts, you'll see I'll do some commentary on the other car. But this 67 Lincoln Continental Convertible, to me, looks and presents very, very well in this listing. So that's kind of a good note to kind of get going with here. It's currently at $28,500. Again, less than 24 hours. There's been a good amount of comments, so we'll kind of look at that as well. We know it has a 462, which is the standard engine. That was used in 66, 67, and partway through 68 until they kind of ran out of those, and then they eventually decided to go midway 60 through 68 production with the 460. This car is finished in royal maroon metallic, kind of more of a rare color in the grand scheme of things, in my opinion. It's, quote, not a black Lincoln. Often so many people want a black Lincoln, but it's nice to see these different colors pop up. The 15-inch wheels, which are standard, you can see very much so, and I'll try to zoom in here, some more of what I refer to as an original interior, which I very much appreciate. It's not perfect, but it kind of has that weathered look a little bit. You always have to be kind of careful on some of these older cars. There's a lot of different things that people can do to go in and kind of fill in cracks and things like that. There's folks that can kind of come in here and airbrush things, but as far as what I see, the leather is very nice in these Lincolns, and if it's maintained well, and there's some leather conditioner added over the course of time, typically it's going to look like this. So it doesn't look like anybody's done anything to the seats to kind of doctor them up, if that makes sense. They do kind of talk about in here the AM/FM radio, the CB radio. Yes, that is a CB apparently. And the clock are inoperative. However, the air condition was serviced in 2024. It doesn't really say if the AC works. I think because it's in that sentence where they're talking about those other items inoperative, that maybe the AC doesn't work. But just to be clear, this is an air-conditioned car. We know, according to this, it's a 49,000-mile car, which is fairly low. Typically you'll see 60, 70, 80,000, easily over 100. But, to see sub 50K, if that is accurate, that is pretty good. There are a good amount of undercarriage photos, which to me, I would just sum it up and say it looks solid underneath. So we'll look at that as one of the pros of this listing. Now, there is a Marti report, which is a deluxe Marti report. Now, just to keep in mind, I mentioned this in the past, these reports are not available on the earlier year Lincolns. It either starts in 66 or 67, and that was due to a fire from everything I've read and understand, back in the day, and all of the records for the earlier year Lincolns were destroyed. So it's not uncommon to see a Marty report, but it's going to be for, I think, 66 and up, or maybe 67 and up, just to be very, very clear. There are some videos, which they do a great job. Anytime someone includes videos, I want to give them kudos for that. Bring a Trailer probably tries to entice them into providing videos. And that's a key thing, right? Because we live in the video age now. It's simple. You can take out your phone, you can make a video, and you can upload it. But the old saying, that, a photo is worth, forget what the saying is. A photo is worth a 1,000 words or something like that. But a video is really key, because it's going to give us an opportunity to take a look and see that the top is working, and so on and so forth. There are a ton of photos. I want to go through some of them now. Again, we're going to see the distinctive 67 grill. It does have 2 or 3 more bars than the 66. So, typically you're going to have more of that, what I kind of refer to as a billet grill look, where you've got the horizontal bars kind of going through there. And to me, it's a nice look. We can also see that right here. If you look at the grill, there's not a lot of spotting that you'll see kind of on the pot metal, which is fantastic. And then I'm also looking at some of these pieces, as I mentioned in the past. In 66, they went from stainless to pot metal on some of the items, like these trim pieces here around where the rear bumper ends are at. And the key thing there is, like, if you look at stainless, stainless isn't going to rust. It's not going to become nasty looking. For the most part, you can polish it up. But certainly the pot metal, at least what we can see on here, looks good. And you can see right here on the rear passenger side, this looks really nice. I owned a 67 that had some really, really, really just bad pieces here. And those pieces are very hard to find. So I like to kind of do a little bit of legwork there and kind of see, wow, that kind of indicates to me the car was taken care of over the course of time. These grills, both on 66 and 67, as I mentioned, they're very similar. The key thing is, you typically will not see them in this good of condition. Now, if you have a grill like I had on my 67 and it just didn't look perfect, to find one that's a nice grill can easily be $500 to $1,000 plus. And of course, the parts are getting harder to find. So, for the grill to look as nice as it does on this car, that's definitely a plus. We can see not only does it have the typical crack in 67 that I've talked about, which we don't typically see in 66, because 66 has a space here, kind of between the dash. It's manufactured a little bit different. But in 67, it is not uncommon to see this tear on the driver's side, if you will, of the square for that speaker that is in there. But however, we do see a huge crack, if you will, or tear. I like to call it a crack, right down the middle of the pod side of the driver's side. We also see, this doesn't look bad. This is probably a shadow from the tree, but the dash certainly isn't perfect. That is one, challenge, but it's not a deal breaker in my opinion. As we go through the rest of these photos, you will see in the listing in the listing itself, it does mention that there was a partial repaint on this car. That's tough to tell, like, if that maybe resulted because of an accident, a fender bender, things like that. But as I always give kudos to Bring a Trailer, that's a key thing, because they're disclosing, or the seller's disclosing good information, key information. We could see here it does have the feature again. It was starting in 66, and that is the method to put the top up or down, which is just to the right of the fuel filler on the driver's side. Okay, that is not on every convertible. That is that was a feature. We can see here that the top is not perfect. However, I will tell you, this is not a deal breaker in my opinion. Yes, you may buy this car and decide, hey, I want to spruce it up. and I want to put a new top on it, by all means, go ahead, do that. But I will tell you, if you're buying a convertible, for the most part, the top is going to be down, right? It's certainly the only exception to that is if you're at a car show and it begins to rain, or you're at a parade or something like that. But the top I've seen far worse, and it's not too bad. We do get a photo here underneath the door, which is key. I would always reinforce to anyone looking to buy one of these cars, you want to see underneath them. And of course, under the door is going to give us an indication if there's any rust or things like that. That is an area prone to, potential challenges, but this one does look solid. As we continue, again, we're seeing that the courtesy lights are also working, which is a good thing. And, we want to take all that into consideration. If you're looking for a car that doesn't seem like it's been touched too much, or kind of monkeyed with, is kind of an old expression that was used a lot, then, this car to me certainly seems like that, the originality is there, which I really appreciate. We can see here 48,641 miles, and it does have the manual vent windows. This gets a little confusing because in the early 60s, they had the manual, then they went to power. I thought that they would have just stuck with it, but when they get to either 66 or 67, I think you can either order it with this, or it was an option to get the manual. The good thing about the manual versus the electric is it's two less things you have to worry about. How often are you going to open the vent windows? Now, I open mine all the time, but it's less switches that you have to have rebuilt potentially, and it's less challenges that you potentially have to deal with. In 66, 67, you have a really nice belt buckle for the seat belt, and these are the correct ones for this year, which is fantastic. I forget if they're exactly the same. I know I had some for 67, and they look just like that, which is great. We're going to continue here going through some of the photos. Again, they have a bunch of upfront photos here showcasing the top. This is key because if you have to go and buy through steel rubber, is who I recommend, and you're buying all of those seals, they can get very, very costly. So, to buy a car that has the nice weather stripping is going to be key. In addition, I love to see in the trunk, what we can see underneath this deck lid is it looks fantastic. Now, has this probably been repainted? Absolutely. The sheen of the paint makes me look like, yeah, it definitely has been repainted at some point. However, these deck lids, even on nice cars, typically are going to have some corrosion, potential rust and holes and things like that. I've talked about that on other videos. But what we can see underneath this deck lid is, wow, it looks fantastic. The other key thing is everything is here. Although it looks a little dingy, you can buy these carpet kits for the trunk from Jim Wallace in Florida. He makes the best kits out there. You could change it out, but to have all of these plastics in here, this stuff is getting very expensive because over the course of 50 to 60 plus years, when folks take these cars apart, they don't always put things back. Things get broken. So, to have a car where everything is there, there's something to be said about that because it's just getting harder to find the parts. I've mentioned in the past 66 and up, John Cashman has always reinforced this. Lincoln did add this bar in here, and that is something you have to do if you own a 64, 65. I have a video on my channel with it, but there were changes made in 66 and up. So on this 67, you're going to see the bar here. We're going to see the pump has been relocated, and you also have the rear is glass. It is not plastic. That is specific to 66 and 67 only for the convertibles, which is very, very cool. We have the blue color for the air cleaner and, the engine parts, if you will, the valve covers. We do see it. It is an air-conditioned car. We have the battery tray in here, which is great. That sometimes is missing. We do see that it has the fan shroud. It has the insulation around these lines. So these fuel lines come out of this driver's side apron over here. And when they come around, you want to have that insulation there. It also has a 3-port, which is key, a 3-port fuel pump that'll ensure, that helps ensure that there will not be vapor lock especially if you're driving a car like this in the warmer parts of the country, such as like where I live in Florida. That can be an issue. Now, this car is in Las Vegas. That's something to consider. The fact that, if you're looking to transport this car, we can see from what I can tell here, it looks like probably original motor mounts. Okay. The motor mounts aren't too difficult to change if someone, is familiar with, doing some things on a car. I will tell you that over the course of time, if the motor mounts need to be changed, it's definitely worth having someone change them for you if it's not something that you want to do, because these cars are heavy, the engine is heavy, and over the course of time, these things will you can just see they are smashed down. And you can get those from Brewer, Classic Lincolns, and a few other places out there. Everything underneath the car looks pretty good. The only thing that I noticed is, if this was a car that I was looking to purchase, I may want to get the exhaust redone. It doesn't have both the resonators and mufflers. It only has, it looks like the mufflers. So that isn't necessarily a big deal. A lot of people will only put the 2 versus the 4 when they, change things over the course of time. But that is something worth noting. This is where you would have the, I was going to mix up either the resonator or the muffler here in this area. And that's why those cars typically are so quiet. Now, what I want to do here, because I don't want to get too long-winded, want to just take a look at some of the key items. So in 67, we know there were 2,276 convertibles produced, total 45,777 for the production. Now, you got to note, 67 is the lowest year convertibles, okay? Remember, there was this downward trend, and in 67, after 67, there's no more convertible, right? 68, it's done. But the key thing is, even though there's only 2,276 convertibles produced, it certainly doesn't mean that it's not a good car. It's just like it was kind of the changing of the times. Maybe the folks didn't like the body style as much. We could see in 66, the convertibles, there were 3,180 produced. Now, I just took this screenshot from Haggerty. These concourse cars are going easily for $100,000+. Remember, factory AC adds 10%. The thing I would tell you here is that this car is certainly above good condition. You could argue, is it excellent condition with the cracks in the dash and things like that? But I would certainly say that this car is a nice one. The listing details have this listed here. The key thing that I would kind of reinforce is, 1, it has AC, and then 2, it does seem to be a low-mile car overall from what we can tell. The Lincoln Registry, they have this message on their website, so I was not able to see if it had been registered prior, but certainly we'll keep an eye on that site here going forward. I usually break down the VIN. Ironically enough, Bring a Trailer did not do that this time, so no worries. I'm here to do it. Basically, 86 is the 4-door convertible in the VIN number here at the top of the slide. We know in this year, before the last digits, you basically have the 8 is standard, and then the 24196 represents the consecutive unit number. So it's the 24,196 built out of the total 45,777 for that model year. I added this to the 67 presentation in the past. And again, it just breaks down the VIN, kind of like how I do it. You can see the different information there. It is worth noting the DSO on this car was from Washington, which we could see here. The DSO 17. Again, typically Bring a Trailer breaks that down. Now, we can also look at the date code. I had this little grid. We can look over here. It's easy. We can see M represents December, and then, of course, 23 is the day of the month. So this car basically on or near December 23rd of 1966, it was produced. And I know sometimes people go, well, why 66? You got to remember, around August, summer, August, if you will, they start producing in this era the models for the next year. So, you're going to have August, September, October, November, December of the prior year for a production date in many cases. In terms of the pros, there's a bunch of them. I already covered most of these. It's mostly original, although it does mention a partial repaint. Everything is there. I think that's key. I talk a little bit about the, the trunk, right? And all of those parts being there. It's not a black Lincoln, so we kind of joke about that. So many folks want a black Lincoln, but if this color is something that you wouldn't mind owning, to me, it's a very cool color. It's solid underneath, and as far as I can tell, it's fairly clean. I've seen cars that look way more leaky, way more greasy, which is fine, but this one, for the most part, from what I can tell, it does look pretty solid. The pot metal looks great, especially on the grill. The things to consider, I mean, there are a few minor dents and dings, and there are the cracks in the dash, which I mentioned. Now, I want to go back up to the top here. I'll give you an example. So I was looking at one of these photos, and again, it's not deal breaker stuff, but these are things that you may not notice in a photo. That's why it's always good to kind of go and look at these cars. So like right here, right? A lot of these cars, this to me looks like a little bit of a ding or a dent right here. Now it could be a shadow, so that's the hard thing to tell. But if we look at this peak molding that comes down here, this is stainless, we could see, and a lot of times these aren't perfect, right? There are a little bit of some dings right in there. My magic mouse doesn't like when I zoom in, but that's key because, again, if you're kind of obsessive compulsive and, you want to have something that's perfect, those are some things that more than likely someone could pull out. Now, someone could chime in, maybe even the owner, and say, hey, that's just a shadow. And that's the challenge sometimes with looking at just the photos. But overall, I would say the exterior of this car is great. We've seen solid numbers with the 66 and up Lincolns, which is fantastic, which I really appreciate because I love this body style. Now, there is some discussion, and I know my friend John at Stinkin' Lincoln, he actually reached out to the gentleman, and he had this, which was the, I forget if John had his hands on this car prior, but this is the invoice for this car. There was a little bit of discussion about it having a tilt steering wheel, which I don't believe it has now. And I believe it does have cruise control, which isn't listed here. So over the course of time, maybe there were some challenges. The steering column may have been swapped out. But you typically would never have access to this because this stuff is just long gone, if that makes sense. But it is neat that John was able to chime in from Stinkin' Lincoln. He's a great guy. There's some other folks, this person mentioned, not seeing the 4 mufflers. Again, there's typically 2 mufflers and 2 resonators. That's essentially what makes these cars so quiet. Other things, somebody had asked about the auto drops. And the auto drops, I believe the gentleman said that it's like working sporadically on the one side, but not the other side. So, those are some things that you would want to kind of figure out. The good thing is, even if the auto drop isn't working, I haven't, talked a lot about this, but let's say you have a car, which many of the convertible owners experience, and the auto drop doesn't work, right? As long as you could put the window up or down from either that particular door or the driver control panel, then, you could put the window down a little bit. The person can open the door. They could close the door, and then you could put the window up. So it's not a huge deal breaker in terms of those not working. It's just if you want everything working on the car, depending on where you live, it's going to be harder to find someone that can kind of get in there and fix those auto drops. Again, the auto drop is because there's not a pillar on these convertibles. So when you go to open the door, the window drops, let's say 3 to 4 inches. You open the door, get out of the car, you close the door, and then the auto drop window comes back and it seals on the weather stripping that I showed you on that, the convertible. So if those aren't working and someone's opening the door and shutting the door with the window all the way up, you're going to see where the window kind of sticks out a little bit because it's not sealing the way it's supposed to. So those are a few things to keep in mind. As far as that goes, I'd be curious to see what you guys think. Please consider subscribing, and I look forward to reviewing the 62 Coyote next. I know this one was a little long-winded. I apologize. I'm a little stuffy. It's that time of the season. Keep it posted to Lincoln Addict Podcast and the Lincoln Addict YouTube channel here. Thank you so much for all the support. ODB, stay on the rise. Peace.
Welcome to LA where the players play, and we ride on the thing.